Okay, good evening, members and members of the public. If you're able, please can I ask you that you remain standing whilst my chaplain, the Reverend Alan Saunders, offers prayers to this meeting.
Good evening, everybody. Let's pray together, shall we? Loving Father, we lift before you our business for this evening at Wigan Whitland Lee Council. And firstly, Lord, we pray for ourselves. We thank you for the responsibility and trust that's been placed in each and every one of us. Lord, we're sorry for the time when we've fallen short of that responsibility, and we ask that you give us grace with a view of others and the wisdom to make good decisions and compassion for the needs of others. Lord, we take a moment now to pray for each of our wards. Just a moment to think and reflect upon all the good that we see as we carry out our duties as councillors and officers. Lord, help us to represent their needs with great compassion and care. Help us to be open to opportunities. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. And Lord, we pray for our borough. Lord, help us to balance both our local needs with the wider needs of the borough. That it may be a borough with opportunity for everyone. That it may be a borough in which everyone may know peace and prosperity and economic growth. That it may be a borough which we see as growing cleaner and greener and safer and healthier. Lord, we pray especially tonight as we take key decisions for this borough in the future. We pray your blessing be upon each member of the council here, a blessing on each of our wards, and a blessing upon the whole of our borough. May it be a place that brings you peace and prosperity and glory. Amen. And the blessing and might of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be upon you and those you love this evening and always. Amen. Thank you.
Please be seated, members. I'll be all right by the time, mate. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I just want to run through some housekeeping prior to tonight's business. We're not expecting a fire drill, therefore when one sounds, please can you follow officers who will lead you to the nearest fire exit, where we will gather at an assembly point on Believe Square. Officers will assist members of the public who are in the public gallery. Can I remind members of the need to respect each other, and I will continue to chair these meetings fairly and to show impartiality. Members of the public are welcome, but should be aware that they should not interrupt or disrupt proceedings. Disruption may result in removal from the public gallery or an adjournment of the meeting in accordance with Rules 18 and 19 of the Council's Rules of Procedure in the Constitution. The rules of conduct for the meeting have been circulated to members in advance of this meeting, and copies are available on your desks. Item number 1, our apologies for absence. Chief Executive.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We have apologies this evening from Councillor Gallagher, Councillor Gallican, Councillor Guest, Councillor Harding, Councillor Hodgkinson, Councillor Merritt, Councillor O'Brien, Councillor Talbot and Councillor Brearley. Do we have any other apologies this evening? Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
So item number 2 are the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of July of this year. I will move the acceptance of the minutes as a correct record for the leader.
Seconded, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Can I put the minutes to the vote? All those in favour of accepting the minutes, please show. Thank you. Anybody against? Oh, that's carried. So thank you. The meeting of the minutes are accepted. Mayor's announcements. Well, obviously, we can see a trophy here, which I'm very pleased that is on display. The Challenge Cup. We're very privileged to have the Challenge Cup with us this evening. And a big thank you to the Lee Lepers for bringing it down. I'd like to congratulate everybody associated with the club for their achievement. We thought we had witnessed something amazing last year with the fan parades from the Women's Euros, but to see 15,000 people line the route for the borough to the town hall and to watch as many as 15,000 gathered on the Civic Square are sights that will live long in the memory of many people. It was a privilege to be involved in the celebrations. Second item, the death of Honorary Freeman Albert Waterfield, MBE. It is with deep regret that I refer to the death of Honorary Freeman Albert Waterfield on the 24th of August. Albert was managing director of the very successful family business Waterfields from 1961 to 1997 and was awarded an MBE in 1998 for services to training before being made an honorary freeman of the borough in December 2000. The funeral took place on the 11th of September at New Church Parish Church, Warrington. On behalf of the council, I've written to his family to extend the council's deepest sympathy for their sad loss. Do any members wish to speak? Leader.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Obviously, I was around when Albert became an honorary freeman of the borough. It was the centenary. It was the year 2000 when we made a number of freemen of the borough, and Albert was certainly up there as a prominent member of this borough in terms of what he gave to the borough. And it wasn't held against him that he was a pie maker from Lee. It was certainly welcomed, and certainly everybody had sampled Albert's wares, visiting the Waterfield shop, and he certainly was a credit both to the borough and to his family. And I know he'll be sadly missed by his children and his grandchildren, I think even great-grandchildren. And certainly Albert was a gentleman, and I thank you for making your comments tonight, Mr Mayor, on behalf of the council and of the borough. Thank you.
Stand for a minute as a mark of respect for honorary freeman Albert Waterfield. Thank you. Please be seated. We're just going to have a slight pause while the challenge cup is taken out of the chamber. Okay, item 4 is declarations of interest. The interim monitoring officer provided advice to all members and relevant guidance has been issued. Members are asked to consider relevant interests for the purpose of this meeting, and if there are any interests declared, members must leave the room during the relevant item. Please fill out the form on your agenda. Return this to the Democratic Services Officer at the end of the meeting.
Mr Mayor, I think the public gallery mentions it for itself tonight, but I think because there's such an interest, Mr Mayor, I would like to move a procedural motion without notice under 10B of the Rules of Procedure to change the order of the business for this evening's agenda and to take item 9, notices of motions at this point, and to request that Councillor Anderton's motion be taken first. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Seconded.
Beg to second, Mr Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Deputy. All those members in favour, please show. Any against? Okay, thank you. So that motion has been passed. The first motion on the agenda that has been submitted by Councillor Merritt will be now heard at the next council meeting due to Councillor Merritt being ill currently. And so the first motion to be heard is Councillor Anderson's, which is set out on page 109 of the agenda. Councillor Anderton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, for allowing me to speak on this motion. Firstly, I just want to address some of the comments that have been made and to remove any doubt that why a councillor from Lee has taken an interest in issues in Standish. I am the portfolio holder for police crime and civil contingencies, and as such, asylum and all support that comes under my oversight. However, I also would like to just point out that others outside this chamber as well have also taken quite an oversized interest with no official link to Standish. So as noted in the motion, we in Wigan Borough, we recognise the need for people fleeing persecution and danger to have their rights and safety protected, just as we would expect if we were in their position. It is right for those in such situations to be offered refuge, and I agree with the call of recognition for this within the motion. What is not acceptable is when the government forces upon us more asylum seekers than our resources can tolerate, especially when they do not adequately fund the local authority. There are local authorities that have yet to be asked to stand up and do their bit. Such decisions are imposed on us like they are other authorities, and when misinformation is also used to stoke hatred, division, and undermine the work of this council and any other local authority in such a position. As signatories to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the UK government is legally bound to deliver upon its commitment to protect everybody's human rights. Moreover, as a signatory to the 1951 Refugee Convention and its subsequent 1967 Refugee Protocol, it is legally obliged to assist any person escaping a country where there is serious threat to life or freedom, and rightly so. However, Wigan Borough has done this several times over. This has been recognised by our challenging to the Home Office to stop the procurement of any further dispersed properties, usually terraced properties, by Serco within this borough. In my opinion, the government has recognised the strain the proportion of dispersed properties has on our local public services, but then is stretching them further by way of use of an unsuitable contingency hotel at Killycourt, whilst offering extremely limited additional help. In essence, they've told us, we know you're struggling, but we're going to pile more on you, deal with it. Frankly, it's not on. It's here that I must acknowledge now the work of the councillors from Standish, Aspel, New Springs and Whalley as well, who have been doing everything they can to oppose this move by McDonald Hotels and the government, including Serco as well. They have done so in the right way, without stoking divisions, tensions and fears, without misdirecting the anger towards the asylum seekers themselves, but rather where it belongs, with the decision makers, those who are ignoring our concerns and the concerns of local people, this council and the councillors themselves. Now I would like to correct some of the grievous misinformation that has been parroted by certain people within this borough. For example, there is a claim circulating on social media that for every asylum seeker entering Killycourt, the council gets £3,000. Absolutely a lie and wrong. If you search online, yes, you'll be given that fact, you'll be given that information, but you only need to do a bit of a dig down and realise that that information is incorrect. What you will know is that the council actually receives a one-time payment of £750 per asylum seeker entering Killycourt. And all and any payments to date that have been made to this council are one-off payments and are by no means covering the costs that we incur as a local taxpayer. So I would ask all members in this chamber to make sure that when they spread information, it is accurate. Additionally, calls are also being made by some in this chamber and beyond for us to challenge with the use of injunctions and to challenge the decision in the same way Chorley, Bolton, which are recent examples, how they have done it. Well, allow me to kind of just elaborate on this then. We have challenged in the same way Bolton and Chorley did, outlining in details why this hotel is unsuitable. But yes, they have failed. Why? Why, you ask? Because Chorley and Bolton's arguments were made over 18 months ago. And since then, in my opinion, the government has moved the due diligence goalpost, the criteria they assess hotels on. And yet they failed to fully grasp the immigration crisis, meaning 18 months, 2 years on now, we are in a worse situation than we were back then. Focusing a little bit more on Chorley, we have taken the same route they did. We have put forward concerns several times, verbally and in writing. All were ignored, and somehow the hotel passes some Home Office due diligence. In Chorley, the hotel failed due diligence and was already closed at the time, 18 months ago, and swiftly after that has changed hands to a new owner, and guess what? They're not seeking an asylum contract from the government. Similarly, when it comes to the use of injunctions, such as in Wakefield, Stoke-on-Trent, and many others who've tried this, who've tried to use these to stop the hotels on planning grounds, These were all temporary, lasting just a few months before being overturned by the High Court. Since then, no injunctions to our knowledge have been won. Only one example has been upheld, and that is in Great Yarmouth, regarding seaside hotels that are protected under a planning code relating to tourism. But despite all these examples and the huge sums of money that it costs local authorities to challenge these failed injunctions, some people in this borough are still calling for us to follow suit. Why? So that we can waste more money, waste in the region of around £30,000 just to start the litigation and get these things to court, to then have them overturned straight away. For those same people to complain that the waste of money that is then frivolously gone away and it was on something that was already doomed to fail. This is political point scoring and opportunism at its worst. The only guaranteed route in the legal is the legal expense, which is this public's money, like the expense that we're already incurring to supervise protests, both by GMP and this council. I firmly believe and hope that nobody in this chamber wants to turn anybody who is fleeing from the most harsh and horrific conditions in the world. Equally, we can't help everybody. In my opinion, the government seems to be acting as though once they've got one hotel somewhere, they'll saturate that area before moving on to somewhere else. In all the leveled down areas that we've had to cope with over the last 13 years of a Conservative government, because they know they can get away with it now. They've shifted their goalposts. Especially when there's areas in the country that have yet to be asked to house any asylum seekers, and they are predominantly in Conservative-held council areas. How is that fair? How is that proportional? How is that right? What's more, the government doesn't discuss or consult with us, with local services or residents, or even hears our concerns, much less allay them. In my opinion, the government engages directly with the private sector hotels, makes the deal with them, then comes into us and tells us, look, this is happening, deal with it. There is no room for discussion, no protest. They simply impose it upon us and ignore all of our concerns. These have been made clear in the letters sent by this council to the Home Office, and yet they've all been sidelined and they've gone ahead with their plans anyway. We, the people of the Wigan Borough, should be standing together to resolutely say, this is the government, to the government, enough is enough. We have done our part. Now go to one of your constituencies and tell them to do theirs. Just like you're trying to tell us we must continue to take on this burden because you can't grasp a crisis of your own making. We will not use hate, we will not use racism, and we will not use victimisation. We choose to...
Councillor O'Byrne, please. Councillor O'Byrne, please sit down. Councillor O'Byrne, I'm stood. Please sit down. Councillor O'Byrne, I won't warn you again. I wish to move that Councillor O'Byrne is no longer heard in this chamber. Will somebody support that motion, please? Okay. And thank you, Miss Councillor O'Byrne. Good evening. Would you like to continue or?
Coming through. Oh, I am now, thank you. Okay, so we choose to direct the blame where it belongs. The government will say it engages with us through multi-agency forums, but it doesn't engage with us at all. It pays us lip service and then says that they've engaged, when actually they've sat us down, let us vent and said, tough. It has completely ignored our concerns and has forced it upon us, when just 18 months ago, hotels with similar characteristics were falling down on due diligence and not being used. But because they are so desperate, they have set their criteria for due diligence and they've shifted that goalpost again. So Killicourt now passes. What does that tell you about this government? Lastly, despite all the points I've made here, I must reiterate that at the heart of this, there are people. Each asylum seeker is a person who is fleeing persecution, death threats, or other atrocities. What this government fails to recognise is that there are people here who are also struggling with the rampant inflation, cost of living, a housing crisis, all with roots back to the budget in October 2020. This was a done deal. We were invited to a meeting and told this is happening. Our concerns fell on deaf ears, and here we are. Protests which should be at the Home Office are now instead at Believe Square because of misinformation, fear-mongering and a divisive rhetoric that is taking hold. The council sent a collective letter, so all councillors in this chamber were represented, as well as individual letters from Standish and Aspel councillors who sent them individually. No one on this side of the council has sat by and done nothing over these last couple of months. We have worked hard for all of our residents and we will continue to do so. Any suggestion to the contrary is patently false. We are exploring all options and have not ruled out anything at this stage, but we have to be responsible with taxpayers' money. I move the motion as set out in the agenda.
Right. Well, you time your speech to almost timed it to perfection, Councillor Anderton. Is the motion seconded?
Seconded, Mr Mayor, and I reserve my right to speak.
Okay.
Thank you.
So do any members wish to speak on this motion? I have Councillor Flynn, first of all.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, for allowing me to speak. This evening, I'm speaking as a local councillor, and I'm also speaking as a local resident and as a local mum. I live near Killay Court. My daughter goes to local high school, and like many local people, I actually used to work there. To me and our residents, this is local. And for residents of Worthington and Standish, I want to say how sad we are that we've lost Killay Court. Somewhere we got married, somewhere we had family celebrations, school leavers, discos, were members of the gym, recommended to family and friends who were visiting. It's somewhere we were proud of. And I want to be absolutely clear that I, along with my Standish with Langtree and Aspel, New Springs and Welly councillor colleagues, we 100% oppose the use of this hotel to accommodate asylum seekers. And I am so angry and disappointed, not only at the decision, but the process and the outcome. And at the mess of the asylum system. Like so many other things in this country, it is broken. The length of time it takes to process claims, and then the consequences that it is having for local communities like ours, but mainly for the poor people, fleeing horrors, who are being housed in thoroughly unsuitable accommodation. The lack of shops, facilities and amenities, that they are a 40-minute walk away. There's no transport, there's no buses. The hotel is right on a busy main road. There's no pavement on the hotel side of the road, and there's only a narrow pavement on the other side of the road, and there's no crossing, there's no street lighting, and we're coming into winter, and there's a lake on site, and a private residence, and a care home next door, and a reservoir in close proximity. I am seriously concerned that somebody is going to die, either by being run over on Chorley Road or by drowning in Worthington Lakes. We have a proud history in Wigan of welcoming people who are fleeing persecution, war and famine. Asylum seekers and refugees are welcome in Wigan Borough and in Standish and Worthington. And I'm not scared of asylum seekers. I'm scared of what might happen to them, being housed in this unsuitable hotel and in an unsuitable location. And I'm scared of the fear and the misinformation and the division that has been sown in our communities around this issue. And I'm angry. I'm absolutely livid because McDonald Hotels, a private company, they are making money out of this. Serco, a private company with links to the Conservative government, they are making money out of this. And Wigan Council, our borough's taxpayers, our local health authority, Greater Manchester Police, we are all losing money. It's costing us to provide the services for asylum seekers who are housed in our borough, and it's far more than the meagre £750 that's provided by a government per asylum seeker in a contingency hotel. And the worst part about it, we were never even asked. No consultation, no discussion, no process to agree or disagree, no process to object or appeal, nothing. We were told it was happening. A commercial deal had been done between McDonald Hotels and Serco, and we as Wigan Council and as local communities in Worthington and Standish, we have to pick up the pieces. We have to absorb the burden, a burden that is not being shouldered equally across the country. Asylum should by definition be safe. It should be appropriate, proportionate and fair. Using Killay Court as a contingency hotel is none of those things. It's not safe nor appropriate for the asylum seekers housed there. It's not proportionate having 2 hotels with over 300 residents in one borough, never mind one village. And it's not fair. It's not fair in Worthington, it's not fair in Standish, it's not fair in Wigan Borough, and it's not fair on those seeking asylum. This Conservative government should be ashamed. Ashamed of how they're treating those fleeing persecution and seeking safety, and thoroughly ashamed of how it is treating our local communities. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Watson's next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start by mentioning that all members of the Independent Network are against the use of the Killicourt Hotel for asylum seekers, and only last week we wrote to the government explaining our objections. So what is an asylum seeker? An asylum seeker is a person who've left their home country as a political refugee, a person who's been forced to leave their country in order to escape war, persecution or a natural disaster. Now, within the UK, there's a legal process under the UK Refugee Resettlement Scheme where we openly accept legitimate claims for asylum from countries such as Ukraine, Afghanistan and Hong Kong. And as a general rule, we don't accept asylum seekers from safe countries. I must also mention that the UK government's position is that refugees should claim asylum in the first safe country they reach. So unless these are arriving on our shores illegally from France or the Republic of Ireland, then those who come via the small boats in the English Channel are not actually asylum seekers, but more economic migrants. This not only puts human life at risk, but profits criminal enterprise whilst delaying genuine asylum seekers a safe haven due to the enormous backlog of illegal applications. Now, this motion asks that, and I quote, totally rejects the Conservative government's policy regarding the asylum seekers in the borough of Wigan. Now, rejecting Conservative policy isn't that standard practice for the Labour Party? And the last time that I checked, we were a local authority and not members of Parliament. Now, this motion mentions holding the Conservative government to account, which is something we can all agree on, as we all should be accountable under a representative democracy. Yet it fails to mention accountability for all members of Parliament on the issues of immigration and asylum. And this includes the Labour Party, who have blocked every proposed solution for this mainly illegal enterprise. Therefore, in terms of accountability, the Labour Party also needs to be held accountable, especially now that we have 2 hotels housing economic migrants in close proximity to each other within the borough. Then there's the financial accountability and sustainability to the British taxpayer, which currently stands at £8 million a day in hotel fees alone. That's 2.9 billion British pounds in taxpayers' money per year, plus an extra £500 million that we're paying the French government to so-called stop the boats. This wasted money would better be used to fund local authorities, fund our own homeless, fund our veterans, and even fund adult health social care. Recently, I've been assisting a homeless resident, who's been living in his car for 4 weeks, and that's now finally been accepted into a homeless shelter. Is this a 4-star luxury hotel? Far from it. He's sleeping in what I regard as squalor and what can only be referred as a soiled mattress. Then we must mention the security issues surrounding those who seek asylum but fail to share our country's values and standards. Now, this crisis is not just a Tory failure, but it's a failure of all members of Parliament who refuse to agree on a working solution due to their ideological differences, which is detrimental to the interests of the British people and also the people of Wigan Borough. Now, this motion also mentions that we should campaign for Labour's plan. Well, let's mention Labour's plan for immigration that this motion requests we follow. This is very much out of the frying pan and into the fire. Recently, Sir Keir Starmer announced that he wants to bring Britain into the common European asylum system, which would allow 100,000 asylum seekers into this country annually. The quote, "never let a good crisis go to waste," springs to mind here, despite the obvious fact that it's the Labour Party who are equally responsible for creating this crisis. Therefore, to support this motion would mean accepting Labour Party's plan, which would be detrimental to the borough and the country as a whole. So to summarise, this motion is nothing short of a political propaganda from the Labour Party, who have blocked every solution the government has put before them, and now as a consequence of their party politics, we are inundated locally with two hotels full of economic migrants. Therefore, I cannot support this motion despite the fact that I'm against the use of Killicourt for these economic migrants, and I'm also against the current national policy on immigration. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, thank you for that contribution. Councillor Parkinson is next on my list.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, for allowing me to speak. I just want to give some facts from Standish. Standish councillors, although we've been accused of doing nothing, have been working extremely hard behind the scenes. Because you can't see what we're doing doesn't mean it's not happening. There's a water cooler behind those doors. The door's shut. Doesn't mean it's not there because you can't see it. We've been targeting all stakeholders, and that includes our residents. We've been asking them questions, their opinions and views. All 3 Standish councillors have a total of 160 years living in Standish between us. We know Standish, its residents, our community, better than most others. In the 4.5 years I've been a councillor, and with the exception of COVID, I've held regular surgeries, and just last week I held mine. We've never had any issues raised about the Britannia Hotel. Indeed, my last surgery, 2 people did turn up, but they had problems with potholes. My reasons for objecting to Killicourt being used is on suitability. As Councillor Flynn has said, there's a fast road, no footpaths, no street lighting, a large reservoir with easy access, no lighting, and extremely dangerous cold, deep water. Since the decision was announced by Serco and the Home Office, we've had weekly, often twice weekly meetings. The Home Office rules state that councillors cannot attend their meetings, but officers of the council can. Those officers came to us for our input. We asked for families to be housed there, a bigger burden on the council because of education. The Home Office and Serco refused. We requested that the councillors be given rights to attend the meetings. The Home Office and Serco refused. One of my letters to the Home Office requesting individual access to the meeting was forwarded back to the council with a request that they deal with me and invite me to the meetings that they made the rules on that prohibited my attendance. My direct requests for meetings from the Prime Minister and Home Secretary got unsatisfactory responses directing us to attend Downing Street and the Home Office. When we approached those, guess what? Our meetings were refused. Councillor Wigan and I have also had conversations with directors at McDonald's Hotel, going directly to those making the decisions. They say the hotel was failing and it was a financial decision. I think we all knew that already though, didn't we? We've been criticised online for not having submitted letters to those asking for them, but that doesn't mean we haven't done them. Our letters have gone directly to those who have influence and the decision makers. The government's website says hand-delivering letters and petitions is a good opportunity for publicity. I'll leave that one with you. Let's look at the facts. To claim asylum, a person has to be in the UK. If they change the law, more people might apply from outside and not risk their lives on the boats. It's clear that the government Stop the Boats pledge is failing, just like this Tory government. Nadine Dorries' own letter to the Prime Minister said, "Since you took office, the country is run by a zombie parliament and nothing meaningful has happened." I agree. Not often I do with Nadine Dorries, to be fair. The government say they're committed to stopping the boats. Nothing has been done. Shortening the process. Nothing has been done. Stopping hotels being used. Nothing has been done. Once here, our asylum seekers placed in the hotels are given a small payment of under £10 a week. There is no entitlement to welfare benefits and they do not have the right to use GP surgeries. Indeed, they do not use them. Hardly economic migrants. Residents don't have access to the pools or gyms. The beds were moved out of Killicourt, single beds were moved in. It is no longer a spa hotel with 4 poster beds, as posted on social media. Meals are also provided by Serco, not the hotel kitchens. Hotels are not suitable accommodation and Killay's location makes it even more unsuitable. Those who have booked weddings and parties have mostly chosen to change, and many have gone to Wrightington, who have also offered work to some of the workers. And we thank those, as part of our community, who have stepped up to help. Standish will always try to help others, but we stand firm in the opinion and will continue to challenge those who make the decisions that Killay Court is unsafe and is not a suitable location to be used as a contingency hotel. And thank you, I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you for that, Councillor Parkinson. Councillor Jones?
Mr Mayor, I think first of all, before we talk about what's right, what's wrong, let's remember the human beings. And I can't even imagine what these people, some of you look a bit shocked at me saying that, I can't even imagine what these people have been through. So the Christian side of me says, I want these people helped. Now, if it was in Bryn, I would do what we should always do. I would represent the majority of my residents who would be against it, as I would imagine your residents in Standish are. But I actually went over before to the protest and I spoke to both sides. I just wanted to hear the opinions because I don't have a dog in this race. And both sides are speaking sense. They are. The residents on this side, they're not far right. They've got genuine concerns. The ones on the left, at loony left, they've got genuine humanitarian, perspective on it. But what worries me about, and I'll tell you now, after speaking to the ones who was for it, I don't think you'll be getting the vote. And I understand the Labour Party, what position you're in. You know, you're trying to win a general election. You know you need the middle vote, but at the same time, you don't want to upset the far left of your party. But sitting on the fence, in my experience, you upset everybody. What I would like to say, and is one point I'd like to ask the leader, is in all the statements it says you're for refugees, but that's the wrong location. My only concern on that one would be is your plan wouldn't be to open council homes to refugees. And I say that, not against refugees, but each and every one of you know in here, with all the inquiries we get, we cannot house people. So I think the government have started this, not you, I agree with every one of you. The government should be the people. If these people are successful on asylum, the government should be the one who look at putting these individuals into permanent homes. And one final point, and I know a lot of you will agree with this, and I'd love if one of you would stand up and call it out for what it is as well. Tony Blair and David Cameron. The reason that this is happening now is because they went in them illegal wars, they destabilised the Middle East. There was no weapons of mass destruction. There was no terrorist attacks from Iraq. They went and they killed thousands and thousands of people. They broke families up, and now a lot of these people, they don't have anywhere to live. Even if they're from Africa, they now don't have that in place in the Middle East, and the whole region is a mess. We went in, we blew the place up, we didn't stay and fix it, and them two people, in my opinion, should be in jail for the rest of their lives. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Whittingham?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for allowing me to speak on this important matter. And I will be, my speech has been prepared. Councillor Parkinson and Councillor Flynn, similar things, but I'll bore you with it anyway. I and my fellow Standish councillors have been attending meetings with council officers and police for many weeks, sometimes twice per week, since the news broke that Killicote was to be used as a contingency accommodation. During the meetings, we expressed to the council that we fully support the efforts of our authority in doing, to get the decision overturned. I wrote a letter to the Home Office expressing my concerns and why this hotel is completely inappropriate to be used as contingency accommodation. And I know that Councillor Parkinson and Councillor Terry Morgan have also written to the Home Office along the same lines. We're all trying many avenues to contact the very people who are the only people who can reverse this Home Office decision. It has been mentioned staff have lost their jobs. Well, I have been told from a very trustworthy source that no one has lost their jobs and weddings have been relocated to Wrightington Country Club. To summarise my points of objection, there is limited public transport, one very small shop approximately half a mile away, no footpath on the east fronting the hotel, one lighting standard 300 metres from the hotel, narrow overgrown footpath to the west of the road. There are no amenities with safe walking distance. Within the same grounds, there are 2 residential care homes and a 3rd under construction. There are 3 large reservoirs to the rear of the hotel with gated access, which are deep and sheer-sided and extremely dangerous. And the post office and library are a good 40 minutes walk. Mr. Mayor, groups with genuine concerns have protested about the poor location of this hotel, some along the same lines, others for different concerns, but all stating the inappropriateness of the location of the Home Office choice. I would like to thank the police, the council officers, who have both been helpful and supportive from day one. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mugan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for letting me speak on this. I've lived in Standish for over 40 years. My wife's Standish born and bred. I've got 2 sons who are both proud Standishers. I've even got grandchildren living in the village. So anybody who wants to say that I don't care about Standish couldn't be further from the truth. What matters to the people of Standish massively matters to me. I live less than half a mile from the Britannia Hotel, so I think I'm more than qualified than probably anybody in this room to know what it's like to live close to a contingency hotel. But this one's really different. The use of Killycourt for housing asylum seekers is wrong for so many reasons, and I'd like to put it on record that the ward councillors of Standish and Aspel have worked over the past few weeks tirelessly, strongly opposing the use of Killycourt as a contingency hotel. And like Councillor Whittingham has just said, we've been meeting twice, sometimes 3 times a week with council officials and the police, and we're doing everything we can to overturn this decision. But don't be fooled. This was a done deal. Long before we were informed it was a done deal. It's been imposed by this inept Tory government, working with Serco and McDonald's hotels, with absolutely no thought for the people of Standish and Wigan, or for the people who are being housed at the hotel. We're proud to be using the most appropriate channels. We're using multi-agency meetings with the council. We've written to the Home Office. We've written to Suella Braverman. And the response that I got from her was, actually, I don't take any kind of correspondence from anybody who isn't a constituent. We've contacted people from the McDonald's hotels, and the responses that we received were exactly as we expected, and they were less than satisfactory. But please be assured, we will continue to pursue every path available to convince these people, and these are the only people who can affect this decision, that it's an error and it needs to be overturned as soon as possible. Killycourt was classed as a 4-star hotel with a gym and a pool in beautiful surroundings. And despite what some people are reporting, it's far from that now. The pool has been drained, the gym equipment has been removed, and there's a large fence that's been erected around the entrance. So not really a luxury stay for anyone, really, is it? For anybody who doesn't know where it is, it's located at the south side of Standish, on a winding country road that leads to Chorley. And this road is it's a notorious black spot for road accidents, and many of those road accidents are fatal. And as already been mentioned, and I will read these again because I think they need reiterating, there's no street lighting on that street. There's no easy access to local amenities. There's no footpaths, so they're very limited. Worthington Lakes, and if you don't know what they are, they're a large body of water at the back of the hotel. That's just an accident waiting to happen. There's actually a residential property in the hotel grounds. And there's 2 elderly care homes, that are really lovely elderly care homes, virtually next door. Any protests against this government-imposed decision should be firmly aimed at the Home Office and the totally shambolic asylum seeker system overseen by this Tory government, and not at this council. Figures at the end of June this year show a caseload of over 215,000 asylum applications, with over 138,000 awaiting an initial decision. Until this is addressed, we will continue to see asylum seekers placed in inappropriate accommodation across the country. And finally, I'd just like to address the people of Standish. When all this political posturing has ended, it'll be people like me and Councillor Parkinson who will still be there, working behind the scenes, day in, day out, making sure that Standish is a great place to live in, it's a great place to work in, it's a great place to grow up in, and a great place to grow old in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We move on to Councillor Gerard now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to speak. This is a bit of a pointy subject, isn't it, this? I think we're all agreeing on the same thing. For me, it's just how the motion's worded, to be able to agree with it. I think all politicians need to work together to sort out this problem, and it's a massive problem. We've got people, the asylum seekers coming over are going through God knows what to get to these shores. There's people dying on the English Channel to get to these shores. They're fleeing persecution. And we need to welcome those who are fleeing war and war-torn countries and persecution, Ukraine, all these areas. But we have to remember, further down the line, that's when we have to distinguish who are fleeing persecution and who are just here from a safe country such as Albania. Now, I go past Keighley Court quite a lot on the 640 route, and as you said, it is on a bus route, but there's no bus stops along that route. And from the other week when it was a nice posh hotel, we pass it now, there's chains around the doors, around the gates, big security cameras, and a big screen gone up across. And there is asylum seekers now just walking up and down the lane, putting themselves in danger. So, why the government want to use this, when they're already using Britannia, is beyond all comprehension. You know, there is other areas, but a lot of this goes down to people, party politics get in the way, locally and nationally. People at the top should be working together, putting politics to one side, and looking at the human beings what are being affected by this, both the asylum seekers and the residents that's going to affect. And Serco, they need scrapping. They call themselves a British company. I put an inquiry in asking how many properties Serco had purchased in Atherton, but the inquiry came back telling me that there's 39 properties been purchased by Serco in the M46 and M29 postcodes. That's Atherton and Tilsley, that's 39. If you times that by how many postcodes there are in this borough, that's quite a lot. And we've got our own residents coming to us who have been in the Greyhound Hotel, living in squalor compared to the Keighley Court, who can't get on the housing ladder. And our councillor tell them, well, try private renting. But all the private renters are going to Serco because they're actually publicised on the website. We're after your property, Serco. They'll take over the management of the properties. So not only are the council houses drying up, the private renters are drying up. It's an absolute mess. and it needs people working together, not against each other, to sort this out. Because we don't know where we're heading into this country. We've had people die, be murdered, raped, in Wigan alone, only the last year. And this was after allegations of harassing schoolgirls in Standish and filming PE lessons. Then not long after, someone got raped. We've had a schoolgirl in Bolton, well, not even schoolgirl, killed by an asylum seeker. And the Manchester Arena bomber, of course, was an asylum seeker. So we need to sort this out. Like I said, with the wording of I suppose what everybody's saying tonight, and I can see it from all angles, but the government really need to work together, not just let politics get in the way. There's been solutions put forward, such as using barracks, old army barracks, military barracks. That gets voted against because it's inhumane. It weren't inhumane when I was stopping in the barracks and other people. You know, there's got to be other solutions than using hotels and circle buying private houses. It's a complete mess, and I hope everybody in this chamber can work together, and everybody at national politics, if they're listening, work together and get this problem sorted for once and for all.
Councillor Cunliffe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Didn't take long for us to get the Addison North Independent Tory Tribute Act back, did it? I mean, everybody in this chamber is clearly saying that Killare Court is not an appropriate place to house asylum seekers. The council have followed the formal procedure of writing and objecting, even though we weren't consulted in any way at all. This was a deal between Home Office appointed Serco and McDonald's Hotels to do that, and then we were told. We put in formal objections explaining why it was inappropriate. And so everybody in this council chamber does not feel that Killare Court is the correct place.
Could you please indicate which part is to have been misunderstood and then clarified it?
Yeah. Councillor Cunliffe said every councillor here said it's not suitable. I didn't say either way. I think it's more suitable than if they was in our council houses. So it wasn't quite everybody. I was quite on the fence.
Okay, so Councillor Jones supports the use of Killare Court for the asylum seekers. That's fine, I accept that.
I think you made your point, Councillor Jones. Shall we move on, Councillor Jones?
Anyway, what we've heard, and the people who politicised this, was Councillor Watson. The Labour Party, despite being in opposition for 13 years, are responsible for the government not being able to address this problem. The Conservative government with an 80-seat majority. Labour can stop the Conservatives in Westminster they can do what they like, they have a majority of 80. And he also criticises Keir Starmer's solution that is going to bring 100,000. Obviously, that's what the Daily Mail says, and that's what Councillor Watson believes. But in actual fact, part of the issue is, and what Keir Starmer raises, is that the government currently, when people arrive over on boats, can't send them back. Why can they not send them back? Because we don't have an agreement to send them back. And this is about negotiating an agreement where we agree to take a certain number, and I think it's around 30,000, but that allows us to send people back who come over in boats. Secondly, you don't have to ask for asylum in the first safe country you come to. And one of the things, and Suella Braverman was at the select committee, and she was asked, I think, by a Conservative MP, what is a safe route for a young person in an African state to apply? And there are no safe routes. There are no safe routes, and you can only apply for asylum when you actually arrive in this country. So actually, the system that the Conservatives have set up have created and encouraged people smuggling and the boats, because people have to actually get here to claim asylum. And then you look at the situation in 2010, when the Labour government, when there was a Labour government, the number of asylum seekers waiting over 6 months for a decision was about 1,000 to 2,000. Today, there are 175,000 asylum seekers waiting for a decision in this country. 132,000 of them have waited longer than 6 months. And that's the reason why they're having to accommodate that number of people in hotels, because they're not dealing with the asylum applications. Even under a Tory government in 2014, 84% of asylum cases had an initial decision within 6 months. Now it's less than 10%. And that's why we've got so many asylum seekers having to be housed using hotels, and it's been indicated that some authorities tend to get the asylum seekers and some don't get any or very little. And so, clearly, Robert Jenrick gave the game away. He said the Conservative government knew about the size of the waiting list, but were using it to try and discourage people from coming seeking asylum. It's actually a deliberate ploy by the Tory party to create this. The government didn't respond to our complaints. Even Tory councillor Ray Whittingham wrote to them, and they ignored the Tory councillors who was expressing the same reasons that we were. So this is clearly a political situation. And you to try and blame it on the Labour Party when we haven't been in control for 13 years, when the Tories have a majority of 80, and actually, in terms of what's being proposed, at least Keir Starmer is presenting a possible solution
Councillor Connolly.
as opposed to the ones that aren't working.
Councillor Connolly. Leader, as you reserve your right to speak, I'll invite you to contribute if you so wish.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And can I just first put things in perspective? And I fully understand the concerns of the people of this borough, what they have over the allocation of this hotel for asylum seekers. We have now wrote to the government on numerous occasions raising our objections over the use of Killay Court. I have wrote to them again today, but I don't expect any positive feedback from them other than what they've stuck to throughout all this correspondence, that they will be using Killay Court. It's under no illusion whatsoever. I'll wait till the conversations are finished, Mr. Mayor, and then I'll... Thank you. But what we have expressed now on numerous occasions have been echoed again in this chamber tonight. And thank you to the people who've made contributions tonight. Although I was a little bit concerned about Councillor Watson's comments, because you can't defend the undefendable. But the comments made by other members in here tonight, and Councillor Jones was very positive with his comments, but I personally know the efforts that have been put in by all three Standish councillors opposing the use of Killay Court has been absolutely spot on. And thank you to the three of you. I also know that other councillors from Aspel have also written, and thank you again for your involvement in this. But Councillor Watson mentioned the £8 million a day, and you're right. You just think what we could have done if we'd just got the £8 million for one day, the services that we could provide for the people of this borough. People come here looking for a better life. And I think Councillor Jones summed it up when he says everybody has a right and to live a normal life. But what we're seeing, when he asked me a question about what we would do, and he asked it to me direct. Can I just tell you, Steve, oh sorry, Councillor Jones, they don't talk to us, they just tell us what they're going to do and expect us to take it and get on with it. With little or no conversation with us, they refuse to meet the Standish members.
Councillor Jones, address any points of explanation through me.
I actually said, if you are for asylum seekers, but not the location, then where is it that if you're for it, where is it you think they should go? My concern was our council house is that stretched. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Well, firstly, they should have a conversation with us. They've never had a conversation with us. And that is where they should start, not just with Wigan, but with every local authority in this country who are expected to pick up the mess they've created. Let's not forget, we've had 13 years of a government who have constantly cocked up everything they've tried to deal with. And this is another classic example. And what I will say to you is that we will continue to make representations on the unsuitability of this hotel. We will not stop doing that until we get a positive response, which I hope will happen someday, but I'm not very confident. But what I say to you, I will and continue to push the Home Office to reverse this decision as quickly as they can. And let's not forget, even when asylum seekers have gone through the process of seeking asylum, those asylum seekers who do not get permission to stay, it has been brought to our attention this week that they can't even get them out of the country even when they've passed it, because they're just so inept in everything they do. So, Mr Mayor, can I thank everybody who's made contributions tonight, and I pledge that we will continue to push for the reversal of this decision. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Anderton, as you moved a motion, do you want to sum up?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, so just to kind of come back to the three key points here. This is a Home Office and McDonald hotel decision. We share our residents' concerns, the concerns about the fairness of using Killicourt, the suitability of using Killicourt, especially for this purpose. And we are doing everything we can to object to this through the right and appropriate channels without frivolously spending money on injunction attempts which we know are doomed to fail. We have a strong track record here of helping people in need, and this goes as far back as the start of the 20th century when we welcomed Irish immigrants into schools who have settled and become part of our cultural fabric here in Wigan. But we've also welcomed people from Afghanistan, Ukraine and many, many others. However, this situation is different. This has not been done fairly. There are other local authorities, so to address Councillor Jones, there are other local authorities that have not been asked to stand up, and they should be asked to stand up now and do their bit. Instead, we're being told, again, to do our bit and shoulder that burden. So, if we think about as well another issue, if we dealt with all the applications, which has been referenced tonight as well, and they hire more staff, that economic cost will be outweighed. We won't have to house people in hotels as well. But the government just don't seem to want to get a grip of it at the minute. But just going back as well, I do thank everyone as well who's written independently to the Home Office as well, an independent network for that. But I really urge you to support the motion because, as Councillor Cunliffe has mentioned, contrary to what he said about the 100,000, 30,000 people with a returns agreement with the EU, which Rishi Sunak has been trying to get himself several months ago and has failed. If we can get that, whoever's in power, they're the negotiators. Sadly, they're the people who are the decision makers. It would be worth supporting. Just to put it in context, 1.2 million people immigrated to the UK last year. 21% of those were asylum seekers. So that's 264,000. We've already heard numbers from this year already in the hundreds of thousands, near to 200,000. So even if it was at the higher number of 100,000, it's immediately halved. And we're working in cooperation with European partners on that as well. If it's 30,000, even better. And Councillor Whittingham, thank you for your contributions as well, because I know you've been really part of this from the beginning. We are working across party lines here to do that here in Wigan, at Wigan Council. But just to kind of as well go back to dispersed housing, and just to kind of reiterate, we have stopped the procurement. We have challenged the Home Office to stop any further procurement by Serco in this borough, as has Oldham, as has Bury, I think one other council as well. And we've got that temporary hold, and we'll do our best to hold that as best we can before, again, we're told what to do here. But I would ask you to get off the fence. There might be some splinters. Come down and support us and support this motion tonight. Mr. Mayor, I ask for a name vote on this motion as well.
Thank you, Councillor Anderton. Can I just make sure we have at least 10 names for wanting a name vote? Right, clearly that's the case. Then can you electronic equipment you have in front of you to vote for or against or abstain on the motion? Thank you. Okay, as you can see, the motion has been clearly approved by this full council. So moving on to the next motion submitted by Councillor Reedy, which is set out on page 111 of the agenda. Councillor Reedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to speak. When we have such an emotive motion, it's really hard to follow. But can I just say, the debate was really good. That all the speakers were really good, and maybe we have differences. But what I will say is, and actually I've been on this council a long time, not as long as the leader, but a long time, and this is where we should debate. This is where we should debate and discuss. We shouldn't debate and have protests in Standish and on Belief Square and raise hatred and racism within this borough, because there is no place for that anywhere like that. So this is where we should debate everything that we do.
Councillor O'Byrne, you've already been silenced by motion by this full council. No, Councillor Jones. Any further interruptions and I will have you removed from this chamber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't read the motion out, but you can see it, and I'm sure everybody in the chamber will probably agree with the sentiments of it, and I'll go through some stuff, and let's hope the Minister for Communities agrees as well and looks at our request. History going back to 2010, I won't deliberate on this too much, and you might say why. In 2010, naturally, we came into austerity. And one of the things, naturally, with meetings with the deputy leader as he was then, and the leader, was that we needed communities. We needed communities to sit up and look at stuff that they could do for us, because we couldn't do anything in those austerities. So that's when we set up the Community Investment Fund. And to date, we've probably put in the region of £12 million into communities and into year wards of this. Then what do we do with COVID? We had COVID Recovery Fund, and our community sat up again and delivered, along with members. And then we had the Community Recovery Fund to get us when we came out of COVID. And in that, we had 389 projects, and we put in nearly £500,000 into that to kind of do that. But what we rely heavily on volunteers, staff, businesses, and members in this chamber to work. And what is that? That's the Wigan way, as we all talk about it, real partnerships. But one of the things I want to kind of touch on tonight, which we'll all be aware of, is fuel poverty. And I think I've spoken to Councillor Watson on this a couple of times. What is fuel poverty? Fuel poverty is classed as 10% of anybody's earnings. So if you look at that in Wigan, when people are on low earnings, they've still got that decision, as we always say, whether it's to eat or put eating on. And while we welcome the government's intervention for the public, because we've all had that cash injection no matter who you are, it's places like Wigan which are still struggling. So where do our communities turn to? Where do our residents turn to when they're in that difficulty? They come to the council, but in their areas they'll turn to the community centres, which are run by our volunteers. And I've got to say that the community team we've got here is fantastic, and they work with those people all the time, day in, day out, and trying to search out funding. I know you all know them in your areas and do that. We've seen energy costs in community centres rise 50%. 50% in that period. What has the government done to do that? Put no resource into community centres and communities. They give it to households, but no resource. And that's where people go when they want help and they want some support there. It won't be long before we see some of our groups, and we'll try to kind of avoid this, who get really close to that borderline of maybe closing or really getting close to that. And we'll step in there and try and help, but we need some people to do that. Volunteers are frustrated with the lack of help from Westminster and government. And I'm sorry to say that, but it is government, and you know, we can point and we'll not go down that road. So what did we do when we set the warm-ups up? One of the things, people who know me, on all benches, I'll be honest, I thought, warm-ups doesn't work. If you're asking somebody to leave their house, to go in somewhere else to be warm, it doesn't work that. You're not gonna leave your house, make yourself cold to get warm again. What you need actually a basis there, so you've got a food pantry, you've got a cafe, you've got people you can talk to, you've got support, and that's what we built with our warm-ups. And it's been really successful, and we've done that across. And what I will say, our communities and you people in this chamber, we combat that isolation, loneliness, mental health, just to name a few. And that eases pressure on the care system, and me and Keith talk about this quite regularly, and the NHS. And if anybody's seen the stuff like what's dealing with the NHS, it really is worrying at the moment. So what I've been doing at the moment, and you'll be glad to hear this, Stuart, Councillor Gerard, if you want me to call you that. Well, I can call you whatever I want, but there we are. Comments from our communities. And what I will be doing next week, I'm coming into Atherton, so I might give you a ring and tell you where I am, so you'll see me. And I just thought I'd ask some people, I've been in Welly this week with some of the councillors, and asking them what's their worries there. Let's hear it from the horse's mouth. And actually, utility costs are a big worry. And some of them were showing me some of the bills that they got, and really worries there. The reducing number of volunteers. And you might say, why is that? Because people now are having to go back to work to find paid employment because of all the energy crisis. So they're having to go out there, whether they've retired, and get part-time jobs. So they've not got time now to volunteer and put that money into there. What I would say is, it's a little bit different when you say it's not a second job. This is an addition that they need to do. A bit like MPs, but they do it for luxury. We actually do it in a necessity. And one of the things I will say about government, if the anti-shafted, can I say that in here? The waspy women, we may have had all them waspy women volunteering in our community centres now. What they also said is they see more and more people go through their doors every day. Just mentioned about the things in Welly. They were queuing up at 8:30 in that Welly area, and not in my ward, in Wigan Central, to queue up for food and get subsistence. I was there at that time and I saw that happening. Really good organisation within the church and part of the church. But they feel they want to. What people are asking as well is out of hours opening. People want, so you may have a community centre which closes at 5. People want it open until 7 or 8 to do stuff. They can't afford them bills. So it's stopping them actually opening at them times what people want it because of the fear of the costs. And I can understand that. At the moment, and I was kind of, when I went through these figures, not astounded, but shocked at some of them. We've got 95 community buildings, we've got 22 food providers, and we've got over 100 other organisations in the VSSE. And last winter, our warm spaces recorded over 200 visitors a year. In August, we give nearly 3,500 food parcels out. But who knows what will happen this winter, because some of them organisations have used all the reserves up. Our community team scour the country looking for grants and actually looking in the grant finder to do all they can to support these people, but it's becoming more and more difficult. One of the things that comes to me from all around this chamber is capital funding. Because naturally you can do everything within a building, but what about when a building's struggling outside and they need repairs? Very few grants come from anywhere on capital funding. We have our hands tied that we can't do that. We're trying to push that all the time, and I know the leader pushes me daily on trying to see what we can do with capital funding. I think, and maybe some people, because this council will be very prudent with the money, we're able to help people doing that. But it's not enough. And I think MPs, and we've spoke about MPs of all parties, maybe should look at the most vulnerable in society and think about it. It could be them one day. It could be them that they could be doing that. I want to finish with, and I said I've been round to a few centres, And I like talking to people, as you'd probably guess anyway, that I like talking. And I thought, I need to speak to people, and I asked them some different things, because we've all got that kind of story. There was a lady there, 75-year-old lady, and I asked her why did she come. So she'd been coming to the centre about 12 months. So she was widowed 3 months before she started going into a centre. So I asked her the question, because we always look at it and say, have you got a family network? Is this someday there? And she said, I've got a strong family network. And what's something that resonated me was, I went, all right. She said, but when my husband had died, 3 months later, I was kind of, all that had gone away. People had stopped visiting me. Everybody got back to their life. My family had to go back to work. Everybody had to do that. I was then stuck. I was in that kind of doldrum of looking at four walls, depression, really suffering with that, until a friend came one day and said, why don't you come to the centre? And it took her 2 months to get through that door. She said, I came out of my house a few times and couldn't raise that kind of aspiration to go in there until she did. And when she opened that door, and this is her words, she said, there were people in there with the same situation that I'd been in. So I thought it was just me, but it wasn't. It was many other people in there. She now, 12 months on, is volunteering a couple of days. She's got a new lease of life. She said to me, her family are happy because she's happy. And in her words, she is not a burden on them anymore. And a burden, they wouldn't see it as that way, but naturally when you're coming home from work, and I think we've all been in that situation, right, I've got to go and see my mum now, see how she is today, and do that. They didn't have that, so she got a laugh back. And that's what our communities mean to people. One other one, which I'll finish on this one, because my time's near, is a stay-at-home dad, which this guy was in there, and he said, you need to speak to him. And what he did, he went into the community centres. It took him a long time to do it, but they're all mums, aren't they? They were toddlers. So for him to break that barrier of going in there as a guy, and he said to me, laughingly, I knew more about babies than most of these mothers in this room. He said, so I taught them a few things or two. But the sentiment of this is we need some support.
Your time is up, Councillor Reedy.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Is the motion seconded?
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I would like to speak now.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to speak. Colleagues, I don't think there is a single member in this chamber who doesn't support a local community group or organisation in their ward. Because I think we all believe that our community groups are an invaluable asset to our towns and villages. However, these organisations, who are the bedrock of local support and connection, are facing existential financial crisis and potential closures. And ironically, Mr. Mayor, at a time when their local communities need them most. Mr. Mayor, we were grappling with this government's prolonged austerity when the pandemic hit us, and we were still struggling with the aftermath of COVID when we found ourselves in the worst and the deepest cost of living crisis in more than 4 decades. The current crisis has tested us in every possible way. The resilience of our communities has been damaged. Cuts to local government funding have crippled the delivery of vital services to our residents. The rising inflation and energy prices have impacted on almost every household budget. And now, more than ever, Mr. Mayor, people need the charity and community sector. Mr. Mayor, our voluntary and community sector has stood by us in every crisis, whether it was austerity or COVID or the current crisis. And today, community organisations are doing all they can to repurpose their services to meet the new needs of their communities, from running food banks and providing shelter to people who are homeless at this point, supporting those who are facing domestic abuse, giving debt advice, and providing housing advocacy services. Mr. Mayor, undoubtedly, our frontline charities have performed heroically in the last decade, but we must realise at this point that they are heroes, not miracle workers. Overall donations have fallen to almost half of what they were before COVID. The Trussell Trust has gone from a 40 million surplus to a 15 million deficit in a year. Hospices across the country are reporting a forecast of 186 million deficit this year. The cost of living crisis has been both longer and deeper than COVID. Mr. Mayor, our voluntary sector is at risk. An immediate risk is to those community organisations that use trading and enterprise, such as community cafes and room hire, to provide income to support their services. With potential closures of especially small local charities, we risk losing the expertise, the staff and the infrastructure that enables them to reach hard-to-reach sections of our society. Mr. Mayor, we would lose community knowledge, our wealth of goodwill, local support, and above all, the trust that has taken years and years to build. Mr. Mayor, in the spring budget, this government pledged about £100 million for English charities and community groups over the next 2 years, which is welcome, but it's not enough. Energy bills will be lower this winter, but still high. And whilst the recent fall in inflation is also welcome, that's not reducing the cost to these community groups. Mr. Mayor, sticking plasters by this government has just slowed down the rate of decline. So, Mr. Mayor, through this motion, this council wants to urge this government to provide more and appropriate funding for our community centres and groups to tackle the current crisis and help our communities in the months and years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Raymond. Councillor Jones.
Listening to Councillor Reedy then, and I was just filled with so much positiveness, and I've not a bad word to say. I've got to point out though, on Councillor Raymond, when you seconded that, this motion is about asking the government for help and more money. Please don't have the Chief Executive write that. It's like if I need something, and I'm going to come to one of your cabinet members or a council officer, you ain't going to get anything, just slating them. And that's why I'm trying not to slate the cabinet right now. So I understand, not saying what you said's wrong, but let's keep it positive. Let's keep, because, and I will say that, and I know you're passionate about it, and I know you're passionate about being a Labour councillor, but I do think this is one of those things where it comes to community groups, let's keep it positive. Councillor Reedy, I read your line on your motion, and I'll be honest, at first I said to my colleagues, I said, he's put this in so there's 5 motions so he can't get any in. And then when I heard you speak, I thought he doesn't just jump on every single picture and have the best job in cabinet. He's very passionate about the job that he does. I've mentioned it to him before. I've got an opportunity for a picture for him. And I've also mentioned it to Councillor Cunliffe, and the leaders are welcome to come as well. Especially Councillor Cunliffe with your mental health knowledge. The 3 of us are involved, volunteer, in a community centre in Bryn. One that we actually won in an asset transfer with the council. And we would love you to come down, see what we do, look at what this community centre, run by a brilliant resident as our director, what we could do with this big building to benefit some of the stuff you're talking about and what advice you could give us. Like I say, you'll get a bit of free food, you'll get a hot drink, and I promise you'll get a picture and I'll even stay out at West. You don't get any problems. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. It'd be interesting to see if that invite's taken up. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to speak on this, and I'd just like to congratulate Councillor Reedy for following on such a colourful debate in the previous motion and doing a sterling job in his opening speech there. And I think I'm just to build on something that he said there, and throughout the pandemic, what set this borough apart from others in the country was our community groups, the way we galvanised those community groups. And each community then helped wider communities, and it snowballed from there. And that really helped a lot of vulnerable people, and that's the biggest strength of this community as a whole, as a borough, is our community assets. Now, we all know that the energy crisis is just, it's beyond control over the past couple of years. And I'm going to go back to the community centre here, and we're very close to the community centre in Atherton North. You know Norman Bradbury very well. And his energy bills are just beyond comprehension at the moment. And it's getting to the point where this is having a knock-on effect to those who wish to use the community centre for financial sustainability. And the community groups in turn are saying, well, we can't afford to pay any more for room hire. So that's going to have a knock-on effect. And, you know, so I fully welcome this motion, and the national government needs to do more to help our community groups and our community centres, because they're the ones who kept this country going throughout the pandemic. Now, in terms of the community teams that we have in this council, they are absolutely brilliant and they do a sterling job. We regularly engage with them in the ward of Aberdeen North. So I'd like to say I'm fully behind this motion, and I'm sure that it's going to get a unanimous vote. And I'd just like to congratulate you both on such a positive motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, you know, this should get unanimous support. And I think, as Councillor Reedy was saying, one of the reasons this council has given £12 million over the last 8-9 years, despite having huge cuts and austerity that we had to face, because we recognise the contribution that community groups, community centres and Action Locally and volunteers can make. And even though it's not a great deal of money, but it had a tremendous impact in terms of community asset transfers, engaging and giving some security, some financial security or additional bit of money for community groups to do this. And so I absolutely agree with this motion, and I think it will be unanimous. However, I do think that in asking the government for money, I would not want the government to be allocating money in Wigan Borough. I think the government should ring-fence money to Wigan, because we have local knowledge. We know where the community groups are who are providing all those services for the community and who are working and creating a much better community, doing food banks or horticultural groups or art groups, whatever they're doing, they're contributing to that community. And that little bit we've been able to give them has helped them. So the investment brings about far greater outcomes and rewards. But I wouldn't like the government to allocate that directly. I think it needs that local knowledge, and for us to be able to do it, even if it's ring-fenced particularly for that purpose and we can't spend it on anything else, but it needs to be local determination. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Reedy, I welcome this motion and got my full support. As Paul touched on there, we've got the community centre, as well as other centres in Atherton, who do a sterling job with the warm-ups, as you mentioned earlier. But the community centre on Agfold has got aspirations to be the first zero-net energy building in this borough, if not the country. I think, you know, community centre. They're close to it now. They're looking at putting solar panels on there, which in turn will help keep costs down for the building, for the energies, and that will be in turn passed on to the nursery what's there, who rent the rooms and all the community groups, and get people into it. As we all agree, the community groups are the backbone of any community, and this council and probably other councils relying on a bit far too much, you know, where they're taking on council work and stuff like that. So hats off, fully support it, and Councillor Reedy, Councillor Raymond, if you would like to come to the community centre in Atherton and have a cup of tea with Norman, I'm pretty sure he'll be obliged. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gerard. There seems to be a lot of invitations for certain people tonight. Okay, Councillor Scarlett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, like everyone else, completely support the motion. As Steve said, we're very involved in the community groups in our area, the community centre specifically, and we can see the pressure that they're under. They're trying to provide the support for residents that so many of our services are struggling with, and they're struggling with the energy bills, sorry. And so they're making decisions like shortening hours or having to turn off heaters and things like that. It shouldn't be choosing whether they're having to turn the lights on in the day, we're turning half the lights on in the community centre because of the energy bills there. It shouldn't be happening. We should be able to light the building, to heat the building, to have that safe place for the community to go to. And so I just want to say, again, Steve's invitation to come down, say, say hello, you'll be welcome, and completely support your motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Reedy, do you need to sum up the vote?
Oh, always. Just a couple of points, really. I think Councillor Watson touched on about COVID and how we handle COVID, and that didn't come with us as a surprise. And when we mentioned about what we did in 2010 and the investment we put into communities over that time, when COVID came, we had everything in place with our communities. Other organisations in 2010, whether it be Tory or Labour, other authorities, didn't follow our lead. They just went to cut. Once you cut, and you cut organisations out like libraries, you never get them back. So we're a firm believer in doing that. Can I just say about Norman and Agfold? And so you're going for carbon neutral. Maybe you can have a word with Norman and say if he started not spitting his hot air out, we might get that sooner rather than later. Can I just say, and I agree with Steve to a certain degree, this motion is about asking government for money. We're under no illusion that they're not going to come with a pot of money. We know that. But this is a way of showing how we're all together in doing this and pushing it forward. Myself, Sonia and Simon have had some really big meetings recently with big organisations we can't mention in this chamber because we're not really there yet, on big pots of money where we may be able to get. So I couldn't mention them in this, but it's about what we do in that. Can I thank you for your invitations? And it just so happens, and so I've had one from Agfold, and that's Ashton and Bryn. Bryn, okay. And I can't be everywhere at every point, so I'm not Superman, although I'd like to think I am, but I'm not. But just had it agreed today with the leader that he's agreed that I can have a cardboard cutout made of myself, so I can be anywhere at any point, and I'll be in your chambers, and I'll be coming seeing you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, could I ask?
Sorry, Councillor Reedy, did you? I missed that comment. Okay, so I presume we have support, sufficient support for a name vote. Okay, so we'll move to use of the electronic equipment on this particular motion. Thank you very much. It's full house according to the Chief Executive, which is unanimous, so very good. The next motion, motion 4, is being submitted by Councillor Jones and it's set out on page 111 of the agenda. I understand this motion is going to be referred to Cabinet without debate in accordance with Rule of Procedure 9.8 and the motion will come back to the future meeting of the Council for consideration. Motion number 5, again submitted by Councillor Flynn, which is set out on page 112 of the agenda. Since the publication of the agenda has been an update on grant funding, therefore this motion will now be again referred to Cabinet without debate in accordance with Real Procedure 9.8 and the motion will come back to a future meeting of the Council for consideration. So we'll now return to the order of business as outlined in the agenda, which is item 5, update from Cabinet portfolio. So I invite any members of the Cabinet who wish to update the Council. If there's none, we can move to item 6.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to speak. Mr. Mayor, digital inclusion has been a long-standing priority for us, but more so during and after the pandemic. We want to ensure that everyone has equitable access to digital technology and the skills necessary to survive and thrive in the digital age. So today I am going to highlight our digital inclusion initiatives and their impact on our residents in the last 18 to 24 months. Mr. Mayor, we started TechMate tea parties during the pandemic to keep people connected and to address social isolation. We currently have 88 active TechMate volunteers running these digital cafes. In July 2023, we held a total of 13 TechMate tea parties and more than 100 residents accessed them for searching and applying for jobs online, learning how to video call, reducing social isolation and enhancing communication skills. Mr. Mayor, residents have received support on how to access online health information and consult with health professionals remotely. These digital drop-ins offer a supportive and non-judgmental environment where individuals can ask questions, seek help, and learn at their own pace. The tea parties also act as a social support, allowing residents, some often very socially isolated, to connect with like-minded people who understand their concerns and problems. Mr. Mayor, in addition, we have successfully been awarded support by Greater Manchester Data Bank to help tackle data poverty and get residents online with provision of free SIMs and mobile data. We have been utilising this to help with care leavers and residents in general through our libraries. We will potentially have a total of 3,600 SIMs to issue over the course of the year, with the provision to grow this number. Mr. Mayor, we are also running a tablet lending library, which not only provides access to technology, but also opens doors to a wide range of opportunities for personal, educational, and professional growth, which is empowering our residents. We have a total of 100 tablets made up of Samsung and Apple devices. Each comes fully data-enabled, which helps residents overcome two key barriers to digital inclusion. Number one, access to devices, and number two, digital connectivity. The digital inclusion team is currently working with sheltered accommodation managers to expand these schemes. The team has surveyed the residents to understand their digital needs and any barriers they may face in order to offer them bespoke training sessions. Mr. Mayor, we are also going to celebrate Digitober, which is a Greater Manchester initiative aimed at reducing digital exclusion and celebrating the digital sector in all its shapes and forms. In Wigan, we are running an exciting calendar of events during October. And finally, Mr. Mayor, I would highlight my account. As of 4th September, we have more than 98,000 citizens who are signed up to my account. Mr. Mayor, through our Digital Communities Partnership, we are committed to digital inclusion, working alongside local businesses, VCSE, charities, and other services who do digital inclusion work. Thank you.
I think Councillor Prescott next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think given some of the topics we've been debating here tonight in the Chamber, I sincerely hope that what I'm about to say will be viewed across the political spectrum, represented in this Chamber as something that we can all accept as good news and something for us all to be very proud of. Mr. Mayor, it is with real pride and pleasure that I can inform members that on the 15th of September, Wigan Council was awarded by the Association of Public Services for Excellence the prestigious National Award for Overall Council of the Year, which is an award that recognises the very best in public services, continuous improvement and delivery provided by UK local authorities. The awards are made by a panel of expert judges over 21 separate categories. Wigan Council were chosen from amongst many other authorities as the best overall council of the year winners. A just reward for all the hard work and commitment that goes on, often unnoticed behind the scenes. Mr. Mayor, it would be wrong for me to single out individuals for individual praise, because this was a team effort, a Team Wigan effort. I offer my personal thanks and congratulations to everyone for the highest standards of public services provided here in the Borough of Wigan, and that's now official, for which we have now rightly been recognised. Earlier today, Mr. Mayor, I attended a celebration at the Makerfield Way Depot that sought to recognise the contributions of those members of the workforce for long service, some with 30 and 40 years service in, as dedicated to hard work and teamwork. Those, Mr. Mayor, are just some of the reasons why Wigan Council have been awarded this national accolade. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, just two very quick updates based on motions that went through full council at the last full council. The first one being on off-road bikes. I just want to kind of report back to full council that we've taken on board a lot of the suggestions that came through that night. It was very fruitful and very positive debate. And a working group is now set up with multiple stakeholders, including council members from the Public Rights of Way, GMP inspectors, neighbourhood managers, and also Lancashire Wildlife Trust, and anyone else who can kind of feed into that debate. So we can really explore our enforcement powers and try and look at all the kind of issues we have across our vast green spaces that we have here. However, I still want to just put on record that people should still keep reporting, should still keep doing that through Crime Stoppers or directly to GMP, particularly because the intelligence gap we have is we know where it's happening, we don't know where it's coming from. And if anyone wants to give that information, I really do encourage that so we can have a serious conversation then about that enforcement. But equally, I just want to kind of update and say that there are serious conversations at both the regional and national level about powers given to the police around e-scooters and e-bikes, and hopefully we'll have some more information about that in the coming months and hopefully into next year as well. The other motion that was put through by Councillor Bullen, and it was around illegal vapes. So I just want to kind of say that there's a new concept, a new group got together now within GMP, working very closely with trade and standards around serious organised crime. So this has been set up now to work with our Community Safety Partnership and GMP. But it's about impacting residents in Wigan and Leigh at a very local level. So we have like the National Crime Agencies at a very regional level and national, but this is about what's happening on a very local level. So the purpose of this board is to address that risk and harm of this serious organised crime in the Wigan Borough. Sometimes when we think of serious organised crime, it's guns and drugs, but in reality, it's anything that's organised. And a big one of those at the minute is illegal vapes, cigs, counterfeiting, money laundering, plus many other things as well. And you've seen probably in the press a lot of positive action being taken on those selling illegal vapes as well around the borough. So it's just another proactive step that I wanted to bring as a positive here about how we're kind of looking at safety across the borough, and hopefully we're moving in the right direction to ensure that there's confidence, that the police are giving confidence to those residents across the Wigan Borough. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Anderton. Councillor Reedy, I think you've been...
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Another positive one from me, guys, so you're all right. Well, one of the things we speak about in this chamber, and we all debate lots of things and have conversation, but without your health, you've got nothing. So health's really important to all of us. And one of the things, and Councillor Watson will like this, is the vision that we've got and the work that we're doing in our leisure centres on health. And I'd like to probably say straight away, Owbridge, and you're a participant at Owbridge, so you've seen this. And we were given an award as well at the same event that Paul spoke about, Best Neighbourhood and Community Initiative. Instead of being where Paul was very caring and said it's about all of us, this was clearly about Owbridge and the people who work there and all the job that they did. Clearly, this was about the AF project, all the pivotal work with health and everything that goes on there daily. So that's something we're doing at Owbridge, we've piloted, and we're also going to do it. We're doing that at Robin Park at the moment. So naturally, there's lots of work going on with that. And if anybody tries to get a doctor's appointment, it's not easy these days. And if anybody's been to A&E recently, it's not the best place you could go to, and it's chocker and really under pressure. So anything we can do to relieve that pressure on GPs and hospitals will be great. And this is the vision going forward, that we turn our leisure centres into wellbeing centres and really look at that. And I've got some examples, and I won't read them out tonight, but people going into leisure centres are more proactive to have the blood pressure done and what have you. And we had 4 instances, I think it was at Wigan and maybe a bit at Owbridge, where people were taken to hospital in an ambulance because they'd had a check there and they'd seen how bad the blood pressure was or what have you. That was telling you that people need to be going to hospitals. We've got occasions there where people were told to go to the doctors, get medication, so on. These are people in some deprived areas who never go to a GP, never go to hospital. They're probably unhealthy anyway because of the lifestyle that they live, and we need to get into them. But I want to kind of touch on a project that actually the leader's going to be fronting up. And what it is with our sports clubs, our major sports clubs, so Warriors, Latics, I nearly said Centurions then, sorry Mr Mayor, the Leopards, about getting them on board with it, and they are on board with it. Because if you think about it, if you want to get people to get your checkups done, what better way? Will they come to the council? Probably not. They may go to a leisure centre because they don't see that as being part of the council sometimes. They'll definitely go to the sports clubs. So we can pivotal use that everybody, and the database, we were talking about this today, the database that the council's got, the database that them sports clubs have got, is immense. We can touch so many people just trying to get into them. And if we're going to be offering free tickets for football or what have you, let's pin it to an health check at the same time. And that's pivotal to everything within a gym. And you know, I sorry keep touching on Councillor Watson and the gym stuff. And we're not going down your road. I'm definitely not touching on what you would probably want me to touch on. It's so important that people actually get into that and do it. So there's so much good stuff going on, and I think at some point we'll bring that back to report and definitely come to scrutiny. The work that's going on behind the scenes. But I want to make a special thanks to Councillor Bullen and the work that she's been doing with myself on the AF project. And that's part of what we've been doing and really successful with Chris Essex-Crosby and all the team there. So I want to thank all the team who's behind all this, who really own it and take it home with them. And it's fabulous what's going on. And we've got to improve people's health and lives, because if we don't do that, we've got nothing. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Reedy. You want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm not sure what this relationship is between Councillor... because I did notice that me and the Deputy Leader didn't get invited, so I'll just... I think what I want to touch on is on Sunday this week is the biggest change to public transport in Greater Manchester for over 40 years. And I know there are people in this change who are far more versed on public transport than probably myself, but it is a significant change in terms of the bus services that are going to come back into our control across Greater Manchester. And the difference that that can make for communities who feel isolated after 7 o'clock at night, and Stuart probably knows better than I, the number of estates where there is no public transport after a certain time of night, which denies the people the right to actually go to a job, go to enjoyment places, and we want to change that in terms of what we deliver on public transport. So this Sunday, the B network starts. I was invited to the first bus leaving the depot, but I'm not too keen on a Sunday morning getting up at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock, and I'll just leave it to the experts to do that. But can I say, this will make a big difference, and you'll start to see the yellow buses up and down this borough, electric buses, therefore helping with what we want to try to do with the air that people breathe within this authority. So, Mr Mayor, on Sunday is the biggest change in public transport that places like Wigan have seen for over 40 years. And I hope that everybody gets a chance to use public transport, which will be a first-class public transport system. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Move on to item 6A now, Health and Social Care Scrutiny Committee, regarding a vacant seat. So a seat's been vacated on this committee by the Independents Together group is now available in accordance with the provisions of Section 15 of the Local Government Regulations 1990. Following correspondence with group leaders, nominations have been received for Councillor Anne Collins, Labour, and Councillor Kath Hulton, Conservative. I will now put the nominations to the vote. All those in favour of Councillor Collins, please raise their hands. Okay. And all those in favour of Councillor Hulton, please raise their hands. Okay, so Councillor Collins is clearly elected to that scrutiny committee. Item 6B is the Local Authority Governor Report. The Council requested to approve the nominations for Governor vacancies and the reappointments set out on the report on page 19 of the agenda. I invite Councillor Bullen to move.
Beg to move, Mr Mayor.
And the recommendation seconded? Thank you. All those in favour of accepting the recommendations are set out in the report? Okay, thank you. That's they're carried. Item 6C is Council dispensation. The report on page 25 of the agenda asks the Council to approve the absence of Councillor O'Brien until further notice on the grounds of ill health. I invite the leader to move the recommendations.
Happy to move the recommendations, Mr Mayor.
Are recommendation seconded?
Second, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Does anybody want to contribute? Can I take all those in favour of recommending? Sorry. Councillor Watson. John. Oh, sorry, it's Jones.
Oh, thank you. As always, I think this is somewhere where we come together on either side, like we have done it past. First I heard of this was when I saw the agenda, so if any of your friends with the councillor, please give my best wishes to the councillor and the family. Thank you very much, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We'd just like to reiterate what Councillor Steve Jones said there. On behalf of the Independent Network, we wish Councillor O'Brien a speedy recovery, and we look forward to seeing this chamber soon. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I'll pass your best wishes to him. Can I just ask all those members in favour of the recommendation to show? Thank you. That's unanimous. Item 6D is the annual scrutiny report. The report on page 29 of the agenda requests that the Council accepts the annual scrutiny report for 2022-23. I invite the Leader to move the recommendation.
Happy to move, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Deputy Leader?
Second, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Do any members wish to speak, contribute on this report? Okay. Can I just take a vote then, and all those in favour of accepting the recommendation as set out in the report, please show. Okay, then that's unanimous, thank you. Item 6E is the mandatory DBS checks for elected members. At page 55 of the agenda, we have a report which has been considered by Cabinet at its meeting on the 31st of August, following a motion to the Council in April of this year. The Council has requested to adopt the recommendation from the Government's independent review of the disclosure and barring regime. I invite the Leader to move the recommendation.
Happy to move the recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Deputy Leader?
To second, Mr Mayor.
Do any members wish to contribute? Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's like a workout this today. So in theory, I support your motion. I, for one, happy to do a DBS check. I have a few concerns over using the word mandatory, because when you read the report, and I know the Leader originally wanted to bring it in as a mandatory enhanced DBS through a motion. I think he gave us quite a stern warning last meeting, if I remember, that was going to be a name vote. I think the Leader's probably found out, and anybody else, and I did reading the reports, that it's a little bit more tricky than that. Looks like councillors with special duties probably in the future will have enhanced DBS checks, which brings up unspent convictions. The rest of us maybe have basic ones. So the only problem I have is I feel it's a little unlawful because it still says mandatory on it. And when you read the report, it is, I think it's best practice you've called it on your report. So if you could just make sure it's legal to call something mandatory when it's not mandatory, and I'll happily support it, because one of my concerns is, would DBS checks possibly stop bad situation we've seen? I think it was 10, 15 years ago, a councillor actually got dragged out of a planning meeting and turned out to be a paedophile. And would, if we'd had DBS checks, possibly, there could have been something. I don't know if that councillor did work with children or not, but if he did, it's certainly something that would horrify every single body in this room. So that's all I want to say, Mr Mayor. Thank you very much.
Leader, did you want to make any comment, or shall we just move to the vote? Oh, Deputy Leader.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I think most of the public out there will be entirely surprised that councillors don't have to have DBS checks. You operate in a position where you're elected by the local community, you are respected, you have power, you may go into schools, you may deal with vulnerable people, and certainly me, who worked as a mental health nurse for years, was subject to an enhanced DBS. I think it would be surprising to people outside that it's not a requirement. I actually think it should be a requirement for MPs as well, for elected positions, although it would probably halve the number of people in Parliament at a straw. But I do think it's important, and it may well become mandatory in future, because that's what they're recommending. And I think at the moment they're recommending it as best practice, but they're recommending that that should be in place. And I think it's appropriate because of the power we have, because of dealing with children, going into schools, dealing with vulnerable people. There should be some assurance to the public that we have a DBS. That doesn't stop anybody with with an offence or whatever, becoming a councillor or being a councillor, but it's just that we're aware of that. In the same way that having an offence and having an enhanced DBS as a mental health nurse doesn't stop you being a mental health nurse, but it's that people are aware that that you have that. Doesn't stop anybody.
Councillor Jones, could you please indicate which point of the rule of procedure from the council's constitution has been breached, and also outline how this has been breached?
I think not on purpose, but the information there was misleading to council. And if you allow me, I'll be very quick in explaining now. Very quickly. It's quite important.
Unfortunately, I'm being advised that it's really not a point of order. I was just...
What, that council been misled is not a point of order? And unintentionally, Councillor Conliffe, but that's a point of order.
Well,
I'll leave it at that, but for next meeting, I think
I'm sure you can.
that needs a
I'm sure you can
conversation.
speak to Councillor Conliffe outside the meeting if you need to.
That's not the rules, but we'll speak about it after the meeting.
Can I just move to the vote on that particular item, please? Unless you want to sum up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Councillor Jones is right. I've gone on about this for a long while. It's not just the last one meeting or the meeting before. Even going back to last year, I emphasised how strongly I felt personally about DBS checks. And the point you raised, if that person or individual now would have a DBS check, we may not have stopped what went on before, but we'll stop what comes in after. And I think as councillors, we all accept our responsibility of community champions across this authority, where we attend schools, where we attend community groups, where we have surgeries, where vulnerable people can come to see us. And I think it's only right and correct that we, as elected representatives for our communities, have a DBS check. I think it's really important that the people out there actually know who we are, what we stand for, and what's in the baggage, if there is any, that they should be aware of. And I support the Deputy Leader in terms of MPs, because it's very interesting in the letter got back, they were looking at us as a very much, and advised us so, of a mandatory introduction for councillors. They didn't go on to say a mandatory check for MPs, or mandatory check for anybody they appoint to the House of Lords. And I certainly think that anybody in public office should have a DBS check, and this is what we're going to do in this authority. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. I will now move to the vote. All those in favour of accepting the recommendation set out in the report, please show. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. Move on to item 6F, which is the Goulburn and Lowton West Neighbourhood Plan. At page 61 of the agenda, we have a report which was considered by the Cabinet at its meeting on the 1st of August of this year. The Council requested to approve the Goulburn and Lowton West Neighbourhood Plan as set out within the report. I invite the Leader to move the recommendation.
Happy to move the recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Does anybody want to contribute to the debate on this item? If not, we'll move to the vote. All those in favour of accepting the recommendation and the report, please show. Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Item 6G is council housing disrepair. At page 69 on the agenda, we have a report from the Director of Place following a motion from Councillor Jones to this council on the 19th of July. The report is an update to address the issues identified by Councillor Jones in his motion, and the council has requested to note the update. I invite Councillor Gambles to move the recommendation.
Beg to move, Mr. Mayor.
Does anybody wish to second the motion?
To second, Mr. Mayor.
Do you wish to... Okay. Do any members wish to contribute? Oh, Councillor Jones.
Very quickly. The DBS checks, they don't see them, they get a reference number. That's why I said it was misleading, put back onto the point. Not on purpose. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So first of all, I want to say to the Cabinet, thank you. I tried something different. I put a motion forward. Instead of just putting it, I sent it over to Cabinet, like I've done today, and you did. you had a report done on it. So from your side, thank you very much. I'll continue to do it that way, and if they keep coming back, I'm happy to have that relationship. The report, again, I want to thank the council officers for answering it. That's the good bits. That's the good bits, I'm afraid. No, we're going to hold judgment. It's very, very vague. Now, the problem that our residents face with repairs, every single one of you get the same inquiries as me. They are waiting months and months and months. And it's not our inspectors. They are passing it on to the contractors. The problem then is the waiting list with the contractors. It can be up to 2 years. So what our motion was intended to do was to, and I come from a building background, I work on site, so I do have a bit of knowledge on this, is sit down with these contractors, find out, have they took too much on? If so, could you narrow it down a little bit, maybe bring another contractor in? Maybe look at bringing the contract back a bit and employing some of our own, because there is a problem. The problem I have with the report, like I say, I'm going to hold judgment on it, is it basically says the same old trap that a lot of time the council fall into. We're already doing it. And clearly, they may be trying, but when it comes to the contractors, it isn't changing. And that isn't going to change with the contractors unless the contracts change with the contractors. Get it? You've got a private company. They want to make money. They take a contract on. That's enormous. They believe they can take it on. And then every job, any job you do with your hands will always turn out harder than what you think it'll be. The only bullet point in the report says we will communicate with councillors. So that's why I want to hold judgment. And what I want to ask the Cabinet is, I can't ask the leader, I think he's gone to the toilet. So I'm going to ask Councillor Cunliffe. We're having a bit of trouble this last couple of days getting on ModGov to see the e-item. So we can only see the minutes presented through the public site. Did you put anything in place to say to the director, we want to relook at this in a couple of months' time on the report that they've done? Or is it just, thanks for your report, Cabinet's passed it through? Because I'm sure you all have the same concerns as councillors. So if you're keeping your eye on it and you wrap it up there, I will be fully supporting it. And once again, thank you for listening to our issues and putting it forward. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Myler.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I also want to say thank you to Cabinet and for the officers for looking into the issue. Everyone in here will have had the same reports that we've had. Councillor Jones already mentioned this, but we've had residents coming with issues with mould, with damp, with windows that don't lock, issues that are going to be detrimental to health. We need them resolving as quickly as possible. And the waiting lists are ridiculous. They're 2 years, 18 months waiting for repairs just isn't okay. I am going to be abstaining on the vote just because I don't think that there was enough in the report to saying that we're aware of the issues, that we are addressing it, but we aren't seeing that. We aren't seeing the result of that. So I'm going to be abstaining on it, but I do want to say thank you to Cabinet and for the officers for looking into it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jarrard has indicated.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I think we've discussed this before. Point 2.1 on the report indicates. You all right? You okay? Right. Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, 2.1 in the report, it says it is acknowledged that there is a significant backlog in the number of repairs that have been requested by our residents, and that we're looking to get new contractors. I think the issue has been over the last God knows how many years is that the contractors that we have been using have been substandard. You know, they're not doing the jobs proper. We've had reports, we've had to get people back. It's doing the job twice, it's costing the different amounts. So my only suggestion would be not to go for the cheapest quote every time. Go for the one with the proven track record that the jobs are done at a high standard, first time, every time. We seem to have fallen into a trap where we think paying less is better. It's probably better for the bank balance at first, but when you keep coming back to repeat repairs, it soon adds up. We've still got a problem with void properties not being turned round. As we discussed before, they're still boarded up and taking the time to relieve the pressure on the housing crisis what we have in the borough. But other than that, I welcome the review and just thought we got a few positive outcomes from it. If you could tell us when you come back to ourselves, what is the actual timescale we're looking at getting properties turned around, void properties turned around and get people into them, and also on our damp issue. How quickly are we going to tackle this damp issue? I mean, I don't need to press home how serious it is. People have died through damp and what have you in other authorities. So we get to that time of year again where it's going to be a big problem. So if you could let us know that, that'd be fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Deputy Leader, did you want to contribute?
Yeah, thank you. And I'll answer Councillor Jones's question really as well. I think generally we all agree and have concern about the backlog of repairs. Part of that backlog was built up during COVID when you couldn't get into properties and all that. And so you've got a backlog. There are difficulties in recruiting tradesmen in terms of, you know, a good plumber, qualified electrician, good plasterer. You know, there are difficulties in recruiting those and we have to do that. The E bit on the agenda was actually about issuing a contracts to 2 companies to actually speed up and deal with the backlog. And because it mentioned 2 companies and a contract, it's not public information, and that's why it was an E item. So nothing sinister in it being an E item. It was purely around the award of contracts to actually get us motoring on the backlog as quickly as possible by appointing contractors. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Councillor Prescott, do you want to use your reserve right to speak?
I've reserved my right to speak, but I think, excuse me for not standing, Mr. Mayor. I think what we need to recognise, and I'm sure Councillor Jones, given his place in the construction industry, will recognise there are real issues here. I think my colleague has spoken about the fact that it's difficult to bring in trades these days, very difficult. At the moment we have some, I think, 50 posts that are vacant. It doesn't help. I think the other thing is about when we were talking about the backlog, significant backlog was built up, as we all know, because of COVID, because we couldn't go into a property unless it was an emergency repair to do. So, Steve, you know the way it works. You just can't do it. It's legislation. I think also you need to recognise, when we talk about mould, and it is an issue that is high on the agenda, obviously we've looked at this, we do look at this, we're very aware of that situation. To my knowledge at this moment in time, nationally there have been deaths, but in Wigan that has not happened, because our response to that was immediate. It was immediate. You okay? Was it? Oh, okay. It was immediate, and I think we need to recognise another thing too. Firstly, this isn't a unique situation to Wigan. It's happened to many, many, many other authorities across the UK. And there is in the report, there are several proposals put forward, of course, about contractors, what we tend to do, the procurement process. So obviously we're getting on with these things. We've recognised those things. And to be fair, Steve, we recognised those things prior to your motion. And we'd already started to make moves on them. But I thank you for bringing it to our attention, give your assurance that we will address those issues. Thank you.
Councillor Prescott, Councillor Gambles, did you want to sum up?
Thank you. I'll not repeat what my colleagues have said. I've actually got a list of that, so it's fine. But we've touched on it many times anyway, about the workforce and materials and everything else. But we've actually got 50 vacancies at the depot at the moment with WLBS. That's the issue we've got there. But we've got 30 apprenticeships, so we're actually growing our own. We've actually had 4 new apprentices start this week, which is fantastic. Just out of last year, we did over 65,000 repairs. We've actually caught up with some of the backlog over the pandemic period. There's been 300 been done in the last 3,000, repairs done that were backlogged from the pandemic, along with all the other major repairs as well. We've actually, as we've talked about, as Councillor Cunliffe have mentioned, we've now entering into contracts with a couple of more in order to pick up some of the problems that we've got from repairs and planned maintenance and also our voids. So that's ongoing. We have had some issues with some of our voids from an asbestos perspective. 40 of those actually were on hold, so we were working on those, so needing to make sure they've got the proper survey and also then the removal of the asbestos, which is of course specialist as well. So we've in addition to that, what Wigan and Lee Building Services have done, they've extended their hours of work. They're working in the weekends now. We've actually got more of the slots in the diaries so that tenants can actually get onto those. There's a handy fix that's being developed as well, which is going to be smaller type jobs. So what we have done in the past, if you've got a washer needing replacing in a tap, a plumber would come along. We've actually going to work on with a handyman so that the plumber can do some of the bigger jobs that we're needing to do as well. And then there's also some new arrangements with the digital side of it. The digital side, from a customer perspective, isn't brilliant. We've actually worked with tenants, with all of the staff that's been involved, contractors, to talk about the repairs system. And we're looking actually improving that. We've had a recent report that's come to the Housing Advisory Panel. They're actually needing to work on that. We're working in respect with the current provider that we've got to enhance that. We want to do more in respect of the communication, which is key. We needed to make sure that people have actually got real time so that the work tradesman is letting them know they're coming, or conversely, the tenant is saying, actually, I can't make it this time, can we rearrange it? So we don't have the calls when people are not in, because it's obviously costing as well, both sides. So we're trying to improve all of that as well. So, and within all of this, as you know, for me, the tenant is front and centre. And what we need to do, we're listening to those tenants, we're listening to people. They're involved in workshops, we're continuing with the tenant's voice. We're growing those groups across the borough, which is fantastic. We've got a really engaged piece of work going on there. And we are just making sure that we're doing that. And we're looking at their requests, their ideas, what they're actually wanting to do, and it's making good progress. And the LBS team, I just want to thank the LBS, Wigan and Lee Building Services and our contractors for really stepping up and making sure that they're making this a priority. Because it's a really high volume of stuff. And the other thing is we're also doing a stock condition survey, which will actually incorporate some of the stuff that you've talked about in respect of the damp and mould. So that's all ongoing as well. So that's just giving you a bit of a flavour. There's a lot going on behind that paper. That's just to hopefully you've just given a bit of an idea of some of the things that we are doing and have been doing and will continue to do. I hope that helps. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gambles. Can I move to the vote in terms of the recommendations set out in the report? Can I please show if you're in favour of the report? Okay, that's great. Any against? Abstentions? Very good. We move on to item 7, which is the capital programme stroke treasury management. At page 75 of the agenda, we have a report which was considered by the Cabinet at its meeting on the 3rd of August 2023. The report provides an update on both the treasury management and capital programme for the period ending June 2023. The Council is requested to approve the recommendations as set out in the report. I invite Councillor Raymond to move the recommendations.
Happy to move the recommendations, Mr. Mayor.
Does anybody wish to second that report? Okay. Do any members wish to contribute? Okay. Well, in that case, we'll move to the vote then. All those... Oh, Councillor Jones, I'm sorry.
It's been very friendly tonight, hasn't it? I hope you're still my friend after this one. Talking about First Stone, we're talking about spending. I mentioned leisure centres before. I've joined our local leisure centre. It's called Ashton, but it's actually in Bryn, as Danny knows. But, wow, what a fantastic job they've done with that. It is so state-of-the-art. I lift the weights, and it even tells me, with a little ball, up and down. You might have noticed I've lost half a stone. So, Chris, brilliant, fantastic. So we always got to spend money. That's my point. We've got to spend money. And there's challenging times, especially since COVID. We're talking about the contractors. I'm asking you to do more. That's going to cost more. So I understand that this council is going to have debts. I learnt the other day by watching the news about equality pay, so I don't know how that affects us and how much we might be paying. At every meeting I come here, and sometimes I take cheap shots, but everything's been friendly today, so I'm not going to do. And actually, I've said it before, I respect the leader. But I am concerned, as a country, on all services we see, from police to ambulances to council, services getting harder and harder to do. So all councils are struggling. Now, we know we dipped into the reserve. I saw the article, I think it was 20 million, something like that we had to dip into the reserves. Now, my worry is that we have 140 million roundabout, and if we keep doing that, how much money will we have left? And I know the way you're going at the moment, we probably won't end up following what's just happened to Birmingham and going bankrupt. But the one concern I have, and I'd love the leader today to put all our minds at rest. The town centre development, and there's been money spent on it this year, so I can mention it. I don't care at this moment who's going to own it or anything like that. I care about our finances and Whitehall not coming in, taking over council and us all losing our positions. Is that money, the £140 million plus that's going to be spent there, do we have an investor that is going to pay that? Or are we now going to pay it out of our budget and borrowing? Because if it's the latter, that really concerns me, because I'm sure you all agree, we could not take a £140 million hit at the moment. We would rather have to borrow or dip more into our reserves. And that's my biggest concern as us as a council. That's not because... Is this why I get shut down?
I think you just might be straying away from the report. Okay. So perhaps if you sum...
Well, I think the report mentions, it has a lot of graphs, you see, Mr Moore, about debt. And if we've borrowed any money during that financial term towards that over there, which I'm sure we would have done, then I'm allowed to speak about it. But I'm closing anyway. But I'm a bit disappointed there, leader. You're whispering that to me rather than just come back to me with the answer to the question. Thank you. And do you know what? I'll do something I never do. If we get an answer on that, I'm going to make it a clear house there. I'm even going to vote this through too. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Paul Watson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to thank the financial team for a very full report and doing, yet again, a sterling job against the odds. Now, I've got a couple of points here. First one regarding the recommendations within the report. And obviously, the more due diligence we have in terms of loaning our money out to other councils, the better. And so I really welcome these measures. But if someone could just explain to me, point 2 in the recommendations, that the council will not place its own cash with a council that has recently been issued with a 114 notice. The term recently, is very loose, because what is recently for the sustainability of this council? And second of all, what's happened in Birmingham 2 weeks ago, we did loan £5 million in June to the West Midlands Combined Authority, of which Birmingham City Council are part of. So, in terms of due diligence going forward, West Midlands Combined Authority, 21st of the 6th, 2023. Am I reading that wrong?
I think that's a different body, not Birmingham City Council itself.
West Midlands Combined Authority.
Separate legal entity.
Is that a separate legal entity? Okay, well, thanks for clarifying that for me, because I'm not part of West Midlands Combined Authority. I would not know. So I welcome this, but so if someone could explain to me what recently refers to, that'd be great. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Leader, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I just want to set Steve's mind at rest. And I weren't whispering because I thought you'd seen something I'd not, because there's nothing in this report relating to the town centre. It's not included in this report. I know. But can I set your mind at rest? We're okay. There's not a problem with that. And just as we wait and we go into the next year or the end of the year, more will become evident in that. I don't want to say too much tonight, Steve, else I'll end up in court. But can I just say that there'll be further updates on that, and I can set your mind at rest. Don't worry about it. We're not following Birmingham or any other authority. we're okay. Okay.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Raymond.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I just address Councillor Watson's concerns? I hear your concerns and I acknowledge your worries about financial position of our council. Can I just clarify that Birmingham City Council is not the same as West Midland Authority? That is a combined authority and a separate legal and financial entity, so it has no relation with Birmingham City Council. Can I also clarify that Section 114 notice is not a loose term? Local government finances are highly regulated, and it is...
Please indicate, Councillor Watson, which part of your early speech appears to be misunderstood and clarify this.
Birmingham City Council have full voting rights within the West Midlands Combined Authority.
I think the point is, it is a separate legal entity, so, you know, I'm not going to say, I think we'll leave it at that.
Can I further clarify, as Wigan Council is a constituent of Greater Manchester Combined Authority, we have a voting right, but Greater Manchester Combined Authority is completely different to us. They have separate financial and legal rules, as we have separate financial and legal rules. So, Section 114 notice is not a loose term. It's local government finances are highly regulated and they are inspected frequently by national government. So if we are about or if we are near issuing Section 114 notices, you know, we will not, if any other authority is close to issuing Section 114 notice, we are keeping a close eye on that and we are not going to invest in those entities. So I just want to reassure all members that despite what is happening on the general local government scene, we are still underborrowed, we are still very prudent, and the security of Wigan's public's money is our top priority. And if anything happens, we will be the first ones to bring it to this chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Raymond. I think we'll move to acceptance or not of the recommendations set out in the report. Please show you in favour. Okay, any against or abstentions? Abstention, okay, that's noted. Item 8, questions. There's no questions or comments have been received. So that really concludes tonight's business.